Raiden 3 is the entry slap bang in the middle of the numbered Raiden series so far. And slap bang in the middle is, in many ways, the perfect way to describe the game overall. In terms of the most developed entries, this is better than 5, but not as good as 4. In terms of the whole series, you can add 1 and 2 to the better than and worse than sides respectively. In terms of gameplay, visuals, scoring, and just about everything really, Raiden 3 just kinda toddles along in the middle. And that's not 100% a bad thing. It rarely excels, but it rarely seriously stumbles either. It's a competent and mostly enjoyable shooting game, and while it doesn't ever push the boat out, at least its boat is seaworthy. You only have one ship, and that ship has just 2 attacks, a rapid shot and a bomb. There are no other major mechanics to speak of. Your ship's speed is infamously slow, and it stays that way throughout, despite the escalation in speed and density of enemy fire. Your rapid shot can be increased through multiple power levels by picking up red, blue or green power-ups dropped by certain enemies, with these also switching between 3 shot types. Red is for a spread shot, one that gives you massive screen coverage when fully maxed out, and blue is for a straight laser that is incredibly powerful but obviously only covers a very narrow range. This blue laser is great for taking down bosses, but it is unfortunately accompanied by a horribly grating and inexplicably loud sound effect that really can get quite annoying. Green is, to all intents and purposes, a bogey prize, and to be avoided at all costs. I think it's supposed to be something like the famous purple toothpaste laser, but it just does not work, and for the most part you're going to be wanting to stick with the spread shot for main stages before switching to the blue laser just before each boss. There are also missile pickups with these firing alongside your rapid shot, and there is of course the much loved fairy to find who will shower you with gifts upon respawning after a death if you've picked her up. Bullet patterns and enemy attacks start off pretty sparse but ramp up in density in the second half of the game. There are a lot of quick targeted bullets, and especially in the later stages you're going to find yourself getting sniped from all sides. However, while a lot of attacks may seem undodgeable at first, the patterns and approaches taken here are not all that innovative, and you'll often find that simply tap dodging without even paying attention is actually enough to see through large parts of certain battles. In terms of scoring, there are 2 main mechanics at play, each of them very simple. One is a multiplier that can only ever reach a max of ×2 for downing enemies as quickly as you can after they arrive on screen. Something that is of course what most players are going to be trying to do anyway, and therefore not something that really changes how you approach the game in any way. The other is an end of stage bonus for picking up yellow points orbs dotted around each stage without dying. The reward for collecting these, however, is not significant enough to make the risk of going out your way to pick them up in the middle of a tricky section even remotely worth your while. There are other scoring elements such as destructible background items, and I think there's some sort of grazing mechanic thrown in with 0 fanfare, but for the most part your score is simply dictated by how far you get. And that, to be perfectly honest, is that. Raiden 3 is as basic as that and as old school as they come. There are 7 stages starting out over green fields, moving on to some sort of offshore military installation before blasting off into space, and the visuals are nice enough, although never anything particularly flashy. There are more than a few issues with bullet visibility though. Things never get as bad as Raiden 5, but small yellow bullets flying through yellow explosions and with yellow points pickups scattered about the place is not really the smartest move. I've seen a fair amount of chat saying Raiden 3 is very difficult, and I would love to hear some more detailed thoughts from players on this, as for me it's a very weird one in terms of both difficulty and engagement. Stages 1 and 2 are relatively simple affairs, and it doesn't take much effort to not just no-miss them, but to be able to no-bomb them as well. They can even come close to being a bit boring at times, such as their relative ease. Stages 3 to 5 are, for me, the game finding its sweet spot, and if the whole thing were like these 3 stages, I'd be far more positive about it. They are hectic, but not impossibly so, not least because of a fair amount of slowdown that I'm unsure of whether it's intentional or not. And since you'll probably have built up a decent stock of bombs through the first couple of stages, even if you're playing kinda lazily, they should be challenging but feel very doable with just a bit of practice. Stages 6 and 7 are just an absolute shit show. The speed and density of bullets combined with their small, hard to see size now start to make your own lack of speed go from a mildly annoying sluggishness to feel absolutely excruciating, and unless you've memorised things to within some very fine margins, you're likely to be eviscerated in a quick sequence of deaths that leave you with very little chance of recovery. Now, even though shmups do tend to start more gently and escalate in difficulty throughout, the way that it's done here is just too extreme at both ends of the spectrum, and Raiden 3 somehow manages to be too easy and too difficult all at once. Given that the slow movement speed is a rather infamous fault with this game, it would have been nice, I think, to have either had a speed up option or even a separate faster mode for this new version, but alas that was not to be. And indeed, despite the game's menu presenting you with what initially looks like an impressive suite of options, there's really nothing much here to sink your teeth into other than the main game itself. There's a boss rush and a stage-by-stage score attack, but there are no arranges or alternate scoring systems. There are online leaderboards, and there's a weird option that allows you to pilot both the P1 and P2 ship at once on one controller, but basically the 7 main stages are what you get here in terms of playable content. Things fare a lot better in terms of superficial extras. There are a bunch of backgrounds, gallery images and ship models, and I do like that the game doesn't hand out infinite credits from the get-go, but makes you actually play the game to earn more. There's also a tatty mode, and the game does look a lot more striking when being played in handheld with a flip grip, with the menus actually rotating with the change too, in contrast to the previous Mikado release of Raiden 4. The main new selling point of this Mikado Maniax edition is of course the soundtrack, and I do have to say yes, this is one area in which the package excels. There are multiple entire soundtracks, and despite utilising the same stage themes, each marks itself out as very different from every other. These two gradually unlock, and it genuinely is worth replaying the game to get them all, and then try out the stages with the many variations. So yeah, if music is your thing, this is very much a worthy package. For everyone else though, this is neither an essential purchase nor one that's an easy skip. Like I said, it's old school, it's simple, it's Raiden in arguably its most basic form. But while it rarely thrilled me, it rarely had me complaining too loudly either. I enjoyed playing this, I liked it, and if what you happen to be looking for is some nice, simple, classic shooting action, Raiden 3 is not a game that's going to play you false. If you're in the mood for something new or unusual, however, you're not going to find much to make you sit up and get excited about here. With that said, I would give Raiden 3 a 7 out of 10. It's definitely worth checking out if you're at a loose end, but it's not one to clear your schedule for if you're already hooked on one of the many better shmups the Switch has to offer. Do let us know your own thoughts down below, especially in terms of the game's difficulty. And thanks as ever for watching. See you next time. Cheers.